I didn't go back to the hospital for nostalgia. I went back because the attic above my garage started leaking in April, and I needed to move 4 banker's boxes I'd saved from the maternity unit before the mold reached them. 40 years of shift notes, policy memos, crib tags and index cards with my neat blue script. Baby boy Turner, Bath at 0720, temp stable. Useless to anyone but me. Still, old nurses collect paper like farmers collect twine. We're convinced some future emergency will ask for exactly the thing everyone else threw away. So there I was, a retired RN with a practical haircut and the kind of shoes you can trust on waxed floors, wheeling a dolly through the side entrance of Riverview Community Hospital, where I'd once learned to swaddle, to advocate, and to say, "No, doctor, not yet," in a tone that saved lives without bruising egos. The administrator, young enough to be my granddaughter, smart enough to be running a small country, had given me permission to use the old records room in the basement for a week. "Clear what you want. We'll digitize what matters. We'll shred what doesn't," she'd said. "Take your time, Mrs. Collins. Basements keep a different climate. The lights flicker to remind you electricity is a gift. The air tastes of paper, toner, and the last storm." I set my boxes on the steel table, pulled on cotton gloves, habit, and opened the first lid. Discharge summaries, bassinet cards clipped to clothespins, footprint sheets with black smudges shaped like commas, names I'd whispered at 3 a.m., when a mother shook with after pains and a father held his breath as if the world would judge him by the way he exhaled. What pulls your hand is never what you think. A drawer labelled 1979-1983 nursery logs wouldn't slide. I tugged. It gave a little and then stuck again, as if a paperclip had decided to become a hinge. I leaned my weight, hips against the cabinet, feet planted like I was pushing a gurney over a carpet seam, and it came loose all at once, bumping my forearm and threatening to dump its history on the floor. Inside, the black ledger we used before the computer terminals arrived, with its lazy spine and a strip of surgical tape along the cover, where I had printed NBN, Newborn Nursery, June 14th, 1982. I remember the heat. The old air conditioner in labor and delivery rattled like a dehydrated tambourine. We kept popsicles in the staff freezer, and I'd hand them to women who thought I was joking until the sugar hit their tongue and a little mercy returned to their eyes. 2 mothers that afternoon. Janet Reynolds, 30 years old, first baby after 3 miscarriages. Maria Alvarez, 19, laboring fast with her second, Spanish murmurs falling from her mother's lips like rosary beads. Both delivered within 40 minutes of each other during shift change. I can still hear the squeal of the wheeled scales and the squeak of wet skin on warm towels. The ledger showed what I knew. Baby girl Reynolds at 3:12 p.m., 7 lbs 2 Oz. Baby girl Alvarez at 3:51 p.m., 6 lbs 9 Oz. Apgar scores tidy as a well-made bed. Next line, ID bands verified, Collins. My name, then to nursery for observation, while mothers recovered. Routine. We'd band the infants in the delivery room. 1 bracelet for baby, 2 for mother, 1 for father if he was present, all printed with name, date, hospital number. I could do it in my sleep and probably did. The bands were plastic with a paper insert. You wrote the data, slid it inside and snapped the clasp. If a clasp didn't click, you'd hear it in your dreams for a week. No bracelet, no baby leaves a nurse's arms. That was the rule I'd defended the way a farmer defends a well. The ledger's next page carried the routine. First bath, first temperature check, first feed, then a note in the margin, my handwriting altered by hurry. Power outage at 16:18. Emergency lights engaged, nursery doors propped. I felt the building in my bones as I read it. Summer thunder, the transformer behind the loading dock giving up with a sigh, the generator lagging before taking on the load. We propped the nursery doors during outages so staff could pass easily without smudging gloves against handles. We thought it was safer. It was, and it wasn't. There, in pencil where I had expected ink, an entry I did not remember writing. Band check. Reynolds band replaced. Clasp cracked. I turned the ledger to the light. The note continued in smaller script. Alvarez infant sleepy. Skin to skin in room 3. 2 lines down. Reunited with mothers 1720. IDs cross-verified. I should have felt reassured. I didn't. Something under the words hummed wrong, like a refrigerator dying one coil at a time. I set the ledger down and went to the shelf with the 1982 discharge packets. Every baby left with a carbon copy form. ID numbers, footprints, mother's signature, nurse's signature. I found Reynolds, Janet and Alvarez, Maria. There they were, mother and infant footprints pressed side by side like a poem about resemblance, except they didn't resemble at all. I held them level, centimetre to centimetre, 2 tiny heels, 2 sets of toes. I'd done enough comparisons to teach students how careful you have to be with smudges and angles. These were clear. The Reynolds infant had a long second toe and a high arch. The Alvarez infant's toes were shorter, arch flatter. The footprints on the Reynolds discharge looked like the Alvarez newborn I remembered, and vice versa. You don't jump to conclusions as a nurse. You test, you verify. You lay out evidence on a clean tray. I pulled the daily crib tag box and found 2 laminated cards with pink borders. Reynolds, girl. 1837, Alvarez, girl. 1838. On the back of the Reynolds tag, someone had written, band replaced, C, my initial. On the Alvarez tag, nothing. Why would I replace one band and not the other? Because only one broke? Because the generator hiccuped and I prioritized? Because we were triaging tears and thermometers with a skeleton crew? I could hear Maggie on the intercom. Charlotte, can you? And me answering, I'm on it, while my hands were already on 4 things. The guilt didn't hit like a slap. It came like weather. It darkened the edges of the room, bent the corners of the ledger. What if, in that hour of outage, 2 pink-hatted babies traded their bracelets, and 40 years of birthdays ran on the wrong tracks? I closed the drawer and walked the length of the room twice. I touched the cold steel of a defunct autoclave, the way a person palms a gravestone, for steadiness. Then I did something I swore I wouldn't do in retirement. I paged the on-call supervisor and asked for a list of contact addresses linked to those old medical record numbers. It's for a continuing care clarification, I said, honest enough, dishonest enough. If policy allows, if not, tell me and I'll let it go. She hesitated. It's a 40-year-old chart, Mrs. Collins. I'll see what we can legally share. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on my side, with the ledgers stacked on the dresser across from me, like witnesses waiting to be sworn in. Every reason to doubt myself took a turn. Memory is not film. Footprints can smudge. Babies change color with the hour. Bands crack and get replaced correctly every day. Against them stood 2 facts. A penciled note about a band I reattached during a power outage, and footprints that did not match my memory of 2 girls I bathed, while rain thrashed the windows and thunder impersonated God. By morning, my old nurse's brain had rearranged into a plan. Find the mothers. Ask permission. Offer testing. Offer counseling. Accept anger. Tell the truth even if it ruins the uncomplicated love I've built with my own past. I made tea. I put on the sweater my husband used to tease had more elbows than sleeves. At 9, the supervisor called. We can't give you current addresses, she said, reasonable, kind, but we can contact former patients and pass along your request. Leave your number. At 11, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. This is Janet Reynolds. Well, Janet Whittaker now, a cautious voice said. The hospital called about some nurse wanting to talk about 1982. That you? I could hear traffic, a blinker. That's me, I said, and felt my mouth go dry. Miss Whittaker, before I ask for anything, I want to tell you I am not sure of anything yet. I have found a note and some footprints that trouble me. They suggest that on June 14, 1982, during a brief power outage, the identification bracelets of two newborn girls may have been mixed up and reattached incorrectly. One of those girls was recorded as your daughter. Silence. Then a long exhale that sounded like a woman taking off a too tight pair of shoes. I have thought, sometimes, she said, and stopped herself. My daughter Lily is tall and dark and theatrical. My husband and I are pale and linear. That can happen. That's not science. But she never looked like me or my mother or my sisters. It didn't matter enough to make me cruel, but sometimes I didn't fill the space. After a moment she said, "What would you like us to do?" I told her exactly, a voluntary DNA test paid for by me or the hospital. I'd sell those banker's boxes if I had to. Gentle contact with the other family, the Alvarezes. Only if both parties consented, counseling referrals, and my willingness to stand in a room and say the awful sentence out loud if it came to that. That a nurse with good intentions made a mistake in a storm and the world turned on it like a hinge. She said, "Call me again at 6, I'll talk to Lily." When I hung up, my hands shook. I made another pot of tea and carried it to the table without spilling, only because 40 years of shift work had taught me to walk on water when necessary. At 4, the hospital called again. They had reached Maria Alvarez, now Maria Campos, still in the region, running a salon with her daughter Ana. "She's willing to hear from you," the supervisor said. "She asked if you remember her mother. She passed last year." I remembered. Abuela Alvarez, hands chapped from laundry, eyes with a glint of humor no contraction could erase. I remembered the way she tucked a flat amulet into her granddaughter's bassinet, while I pretended not to notice because policies are one thing and culture is another, and what heals must seldom be forbidden. By 6, the July sky had opened its own ledger of thunder. Janet called first. "We'll test," she said, and then, oddly, "I'm making a meatloaf." Everyone needs something familiar when the world is about to go to paper. At 6:15, Maria called. "Senora Collins," she said, using the honorific my career hadn't asked for, but my years had earned. "Ana will test too. She jokes we will be famous. I do not want famous, I want the truth." I thought truth would feel like a verdict. In that moment it felt like the smallest of mercies. 2 women willing to stand with me while we asked the past to answer for itself. I closed the ledger and slid the drawer. This time it obeyed. In the hallway, a floor polisher hummed. Above the stairwell, rain hit the glass like applause or warning, depending on your mood. I wrote in my small notebook the sentence I would need tomorrow when doubt woke hungry. Validation is not betrayal. It is the only kindness that doesn't expire. Then I locked the records room, climbed the stairs slowly, and went home to set 2 placemats and tell my late husband, out loud in an empty kitchen, what I had done. The DNA clinic did not look like destiny. It looked like a dentist's office with better brochures. A television murmured about weather 5 states away. A ficus plant attempted optimism under a fluorescent light. Janet arrived with Lily, 39 years old, a theater teacher in chunky earrings, shoulders squared like a person who's had to defend her softness. Maria arrived with Ana, quiet eyes, salon hands, a laugh that came easily, and sat close to the chest when strangers were near. We met halfway between our towns because fairness likes to split miles. I had offered to wait in the car and to be present only if asked. Both families had said, "Come in voices you use for someone who may be part of a story you didn't audition for, but must now cast with grace." The receptionist called the names in pairs. Swabs were twirled against cheeks, envelopes sealed. The counselor, a woman with silver hair and a deliberate kindness, explained turnaround time and privacy. "Results will go to each of you directly," she said, looking also at me. "Ms. Collins, with permission, you will be copied for the record review." I nodded, grateful to be made visible and held accountable at once. After, none of us wanted to go home yet. Janet suggested coffee. Maria countered with the diner next door. We sat in a booth that had lost its argument with comfort 20 years ago and ordered pie like a jury that knows the verdict won't be quick. We didn't talk about nature versus nurture, lawsuits or headlines. We talked about third-grade teachers, lifelong allergies who hate cilantro, who cries at dog movies, and why Tuesday afternoons are the loneliest hour in any week. Lily asked Anna how long she'd been cutting hair. Anna said since she could hold a comb. Lily said that made sense. Her own hands always felt better with fabric and light cues than with quadratic equations. Maria asked Janet if she had ever cooked with lard. Janet confessed she made biscuits with butter because that's what her mother taught. Maria pressed her lips together, then smiled. "It is a sin and also delicious," she decreed, and the table laughed, the kind of laugh people use to build a plank over a ravine. Waiting does not improve with age, but older women know how to upholster it. We texted about nothing for 3 days. Pie recipes, a picture of someone's cat supervising laundry, while my gut practiced heartburn and my sleep kept slipping its schedule. On the 4th day, the clinic emailed the results to each woman. My copy arrived a heartbeat later. I opened mine like I used to open pathology reports, steadily, knowing that hands can shake after they do their job. Probability of maternity between Janet and Lily, non-consistent with first-degree relationship. Probability of maternity between Janet and Anna, 99%. Probability of maternity between Maria and Anna, non-consistent. Probability of maternity between Maria and Lily, 99%. Science rarely speaks so loudly. The numbers didn't just point, they placed. I called the hospital administrator first. I wanted the institutional confession ready before I asked 2 families to hold it. She picked up on the second ring. I read the summary. She didn't rush to mitigate or distance. "We will take responsibility," she said, voice steady. "We will convene risk management, legal, PR, but not to hide, to provide resources. Most of the players are gone, but the building has a duty." She asked me one question that mattered. "Charlotte, are you all right to lead the conversation with the families, or do you want me to do it?" I answered honestly. "With them, yes. For them, the hospital must speak too." Days we met at the hospital in a conference room that had never held so much human weather. Someone had set a tray of bottled water and tissues, as if grief were a predictable guest who wanted hydration. Janet and Lily sat on one side, Maria and Anna on the other. The administrator, Emily, opened with what most institutions save for last. "We believe you, the evidence is clear, and the hospital is sorry." She did not say if or alleged or unfortunate. She said we and sorry. In my palm, some muscle unclenched that had been braced for decades. Then it was my turn. "On June 14th, 1982, I began. During a power outage in the nursery, I documented replacing 1 infant identification band. The evidence now shows that 2 newborn girls were reunited with the wrong mothers. I cannot tell you precisely where my hands failed. I can tell you that I was responsible for the cross-check, that the door was propped, that the generator lagged, that shift change noise and summer thunder crowded a room where only quiet should live. I can tell you I'm sorry, not bureaucratically. As a woman whose hands bathed your daughters, as a nurse who meant to be the guardrail and wasn't." Silence stretched. Paper crinkled under someone's nervous fingers. Lily folded and unfolded a tissue as if making a small white bird. Anna looked at the ceiling, then at me. "I always wondered why my hair went this way," she said, and tugged lightly at a cowlick blooming stubbornly eastward. The room laughed, gently. The release wasn't absolution. It was oxygen. Janet asked the questions of a mother and an accountant. What happens legally? Birth certificates, names, medical histories. Emily answered with a roadmap. Birth records can be amended. We'll cover legal fees. We'll pay for comprehensive medical reviews and update family histories. If you want counseling, we'll fund it as long as needed. If you want nothing from us but a letter admitting fault, you'll have it. Maria asked for one more thing. Please put a plaque in the nursery for the nurses, not with our names, with the lesson. Maybe next time a storm comes, someone will read it and keep the doors closed." Emily nodded. "We will." But the harder questions came out crooked, because that's how pain travels when it doesn't want to be a performance. "Do I have to choose a mother?" Lily asked, eyes on her hands. "No," I said before anyone else could entangle it. "You don't have to choose. You have two families, built by biology and by practice. Love isn't a line, it's a quilt. It holds, if we let it." Anna asked quietly, "What do I call you?" looking from Maria to Janet and back. Maria reached and took her hand. "Mama," she said to Anna, then tipped her chin toward Janet. "And Janet until your heart decides if it wants another word." Janet nodded, tears calm as rain. "I'll answer to whatever you need," she said, "even if it's just the lady who brings the green beans to Thanksgiving." We planned like women do when the world insists the plan is impossible. 2 small gatherings. Not one big reunion with cameras, but Saturdays in backyards, food on paper plates, photo albums passed without ceremony, medical appointments to swap histories, who had gallbladders removed, who faints at the sight of blood, who should be screened early for thyroid. Boundaries spoken out loud, no surprise visits, no social media announcements unless everyone consents. A season for everything, a season to test, to pause, to name what hurts and what heals. Later, alone in the empty nursery, now a brightly lit postpartum suite with monitors that don't stutter and bracelets that chirp when a baby crosses the wrong threshold. I sat in the vinyl chair and let 40 years come to stand around me. I saw Janet's labor face, lips thin with determination and fear. Maria's mother's hands, cracking and faithful. My younger self, efficient to the point of pride, too confident in processes that were good, but not foolproof. I saw a door propped open, light slanting across a floor, 2 bassinets with pink cards, the generator coughing itself awake like an old man clearing his throat to speak. I heard my own voice from that night. IDs cross-verified. A sentence said with sincerity and, as it turns out, insufficient doubt. Nurses are trained to own error without letting it own us. We log it, we learn, we change a protocol, we come back the next shift and place our hands again in the work. But some mistakes are measured in birthdays. This one was. The only way I know to live with that is to keep my hands open, to pass along the ring of keys to error-proofing. No prop doors, no single-person checks when conditions degrade, redundancy that seems fussy on calm days and saintly when the lights flicker. To speak to students about how good intentions fail, not with villainy, but with noise, fatigue, and assumptions made under pressure. A month on, the 4 women sent me pictures. Lily and Maria on a porch swing, hair back, eyebrows shaped the same way by habit neither woman had noticed. Anna and Janet, elbow deep in a salad bowl, debating vinegar versus lemon with the seriousness of diplomats. The captions were small. First Saturday. Second Saturday. No declarations, just attendance. In one image, a hand I knew, my own, appeared at the edge, passing a plate. I don't remember the photographer catching me, but I remember the heat and the smell of cut grass and the sound of women pronouncing each other's names carefully, rehearsing a future in which grief and gratitude sit at the same table without knocking things over. People ask, inevitably, about blame. If a microphone ever came near me, which I pray it won't, I would say this: blame is not a cot that lets anyone rest. Responsibility is. I was responsible that afternoon. The hospital is responsible now. The power outage was a factor. The prop door was a factor. My confidence was a factor. We can repair systems, we cannot rewind time. So we do the only thing left. We tell the truth, we amend what can be amended, and we refuse to let silence do the rest of the harm. On my kitchen wall hangs a small framed card. The very crib tag that once rode the bassinet labelled Reynolds Girl, Law 18337. I asked permission to keep it when the legal work finished. Beneath it I've taped a handwritten note in my blue script. Double-check during storms. Never prop the door. Love survives audits. When I make tea in the evening, I touch the frame like a mezuzah and say the names, all four: Janet, Maria, Lily, Anna. I say, forgive me, but I also say thank you, because they let me stand inside the room where the past was examined and not be sent outside when the results came in. The drawer that once refused me closes easily now. The ink hasn't faded. And in a bright nursery 3 floors above, a new nurse reads a plaque Maria requested. In memory of what was learned, during outages, doors stay closed. 2 nurses verify ID bands. Babies are not released on assumptions. A community is built 1 check at a time. She tucks a bracelet snug, hears the click, and looks into a mother's face with the fierce tenderness I remember. The storm will come again one day. They always do. But this time the latch will hold. And somewhere on a porch, on a Saturday, 2 women will be trading recipes and history, neither needing to choose between the love that raised her and the love that named her, because we did the paperwork and the heart work, and both, in the end, are what make a life belong to itself.